All right, 30 seconds.
Who's going in first?
Me. All right, Life, Love, and the Grind. Every Saturday, 1 to 2 p.m. Back at it again with my my right-hand man, Raza. What's going on, man?
Hey, Sean,
Good to
as
be
you
back
know,
in the
there's a
studio.
lot going on this weekend. You noticed a laptop in front of me. I'm not a technical guy, but here I am like a little magician typing away because Sarah Sadat, our producer,
Yeah.
is out of this town in Chicago at the Women's March. So so I'm trying to do a couple different roles at
And
once.
shout
but-
out to Sarsadet, the brains behind the whole operation as usual.
You know, I didn't realize that till I tried to figure out what it is exactly that she does here. But
Yeah.
I am excited about this show. I'll tell you this:
Yeah.
it's worth sweating a little and getting this figured out because we have not one but two great guests today.
Mhm.
Two great guests. Sean, tell us about
Yeah, and from
these
two
guests.
separate worlds. So we got Jeanette DeFelice, who's a candidate, writer, doctor, former professional dancer.
No, Sean, you and I've had this discussion. I think you get so so engrossed with the candidacy of people.
Well, because I'm looking at my notes.
Take these notes and
Well, it's
toss
such-
them right away.
it's such a
because
long
I'm
list of
up for it.
things.
I'll-
It's such a long list of
it's a long
accomplishments.
list of things, but I think what sets you apart is you are a doctor, a trained doctor, a ballet dancer. You've done quite a few things, and you know, in your spare time, when one thing or another wasn't happening, you've written a couple of books. I
Oh,
heard.
yes.
Yeah.
a couple.
And we'll get to that. We'll get to that as
And
well.
we have Jeff as well. So my feeling is it's always all about the grind. What you know, anyone can run for anything. Man, I should run for something.
Yeah,
but
you
it's
can.
more about what defines a person as a person, right? Something that makes the richness. What separates you or you? Tell us
Yeah.
about yourself. Sean, actually introduce him. And then
Yeah,
we'll
so
talk to
Jeff
both of
Garris,
them.
and who's you know, environmental engineer, an environmental commissioner for 12 years. I kind of want to dive into that a little bit because I'm not gonna lie, I don't really know what an environmental commissioner does.
What what is that exactly?
Well, most towns have environmental commissions in DuPage. I mean, not every town does. And it's an advisory board. Basically, it gives the city council or village board some advice on environmental issues. You could weigh in on garbage contracts or how to recycle better,
Now
other
is
things,
this a
butterfly
full-
gardens, whatever.
I gotta ask, is it a full-time position? Is it a
It's a,
committee?
it's a
or-
volunteer committee thing. People, they normally meet once a month.
Now, how often does a local government have an understanding or even a care in the world about the environmental issues? Because I'll tell you this,
Yeah.
I know like when a gas station goes in, people don't think about what happens when that gas station comes out, but you probably do.
Yeah, well, you got underground storage tanks that can leak. Yeah, that's the number one issue.
All right.
And people don't like the traffic and the fumes that might come off of it if the gas collection systems aren't working right. But it basically has an impact on the neighborhoods. That's why Glen Ellen had a big dispute a couple years ago.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
also within 300 feet of an elementary school, I
Yeah,
believe, too. And so
yeah.
a lot of people were kind of up in arms about all the,
Yeah.
the fumes that would come off and affect the
Yeah.
children and stuff. So they've successfully fought against having that gas station at Five Corners, from
Yeah.
what I understand. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's, there's been some beautiful examples of community organizing like that, which I like Willowbrook more recently with the stereogenics plant. When people feel threatened, they come out of the woodwork. And I had the pleasure of working with groups in Detroit as part of a professional job, dealing with environmental issues there with incineration or other industrial things in the area where they have the worst air quality in all of Michigan, and the cancer rates are higher. And it's low income, so it affects people disproportionately. They call that environmental justice stuff.
This is in Michigan.
Yeah, that's Michigan.
I heard they had a couple different instances of maybe economic environmental injustices, the water
Yeah.
situation out in Flint.
Yeah.
Now that obviously got some notoriety. It put
National
Governor
news.
absolutely put Governor Snyder kind of on notice. But are you telling me that there were other instances that were being followed in that state that didn't get as much attention? And how often does stuff like that happen? Because let's be transparent. Environmental issues are not the sexiest issues. They probably don't get the most play in media. Tell us about other situations where there's been something to the detriment of the community and maybe didn't get as much time as it deserved.
Oh, yeah, it's you know, you often have issues that are very local in scope, and so if it's a landfill, you know, there's some studies that say if you live near a landfill, it's not as healthy. or there's this lock former issue in Downers Grove, and eventually it's ignored by a lot of people, it's ignored by the public, and then the elected officials ignore it. But eventually something emerges out of that, like there's something going on here that isn't right. And then you need some community leader who steps up and says, we got to do something about this. And then it starts to, then eventually people find a way to get the media interested in it. So it becomes a media story. And then sometimes I think government is like forced to respond on a local level.
Well, the environment, climate is obviously a huge issue, especially now.
Well, and I also feel like you said, sometimes government steps in, but a lot of times it's concerned activists. And Jeanette, you are a activist, are you not? You've done a lot in terms of public health advocacy. You tell us a little about that, because I read a little bit of your bio and I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a great show. And tell me
Pretty
why.
impressive.
Yeah, tell
No, I mean, I'm just really concerned with the health effects of climate change and other things that are environmental. Like environmental also includes pollution, also includes like the ethylene oxide from Sterigenics. That's all, those are all environmental issues. It's not just the climate. And so these things, especially climate change, is going to bring with it these rising temperatures that are going to affect labor, especially outdoor laborers. You're going to have these heat waves that come and people aren't going to be prepared for them. We did a study that was looking for kind of like an international standard, or at least a standard for OSHA, a heat standard, and there isn't one. There are 2 states in America that have an outdoor heat standard for workers, where they would have to take a 15-minute break every so often, or they'd have to have water every so often, or have to have shade every so often. Those 2 states are California and Washington. No other states in the United States has a heat standard that protects workers. Things can happen like heat-related illnesses, heat stroke, which can be deadly, chronic kidney disease from being dehydrated, cardiovascular issues. People can get myocardial infarction from heat-related stress. Also, we all know that heat makes us crabby, and so there can be more workplace violence and stuff. So, yeah, there's a lot of issues that we have to be concerned with when it comes to the environment around us.
Well, the importance with that going to workers is, especially in Chicago, it's a huge labor union city. So within a strong labor movement comes stronger, treatment of workers, where they look out for them on the jobs. Obviously, Chicago can be 100 degrees, and there's a lot of workplace safety, which is
the
good.
urban heat island effect that affects Chicago, disproportionately. So,
and you're a writer, obviously. You
I
wrote
am
some
a
books.
writer.
We'll plug you a little bit later. And you write about climate change and gun violence, and just to name a few things. So you guys are both pretty experienced in this
You
topic.
seem like an expressive person. Let's put that out there. Like in reading your bio, you were in the dance. You were in ballet.
I was a professional dancer. It was more contemporary dance. I danced with a couple companies in Chicago and with the Lyric Opera. I got to go on European tour and, some really cool stuff. I did a lot of teaching too, which was really fun. And I was also a member of the American Guild of Musical Artists, which is a union that fights for, working conditions, wages, the same thing that we're all trying to strive for: good working conditions, good wages. And I remember on that job, I had the union behind me, and I got injured, and I got workers' comp, and I got treatment. I got all sorts of good stuff. Then my contract ended. But
And then you lost
but it was cool when I had it.
Well, let me ask you this: what inspired you to get into this for a living? Because so often we hear about people who have a love for something creative, have a passion, but are told it's not lucrative, it's hard to make a living. Yet here you were, I imagine, a young girl who was like, I want to be a dancer, and you followed it through to make a career, or at least a career step out of it. Tell me how that happened. Did you have a supportive family? Did you do this despite the family?
No. You know what? I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I think there was a story from when I was a baby that my father tried to get my brother to do something when he was a baby, and he gave him a toy or something, and he did it. And the story was that my father tried to do the same thing with me. And he gave me the toy, and I was like, no, I'm going to do what I'm going to do.
You're like, let's negotiate. What's in this for me?
But I danced ever since I was 3 years old. I just danced and danced and danced, and that's all I ever did. I mean, so it just kind of, one thing grew out of another thing, and it just kind of happened. So.
And it's something you stuck with. And is it something you visualized as a child, that this is what I want to do, or is it just something where opportunities given to like here's the thing. I hear whenever an artist tries to get into an artistic field, I imagine there was a lot of competition for
Oh
this
yeah,
job.
especially
So-
among women in dance. There's so many women in dance. Men,
Mhm.
if you're a man in dance, you're in. That's it.
Yeah.
But there's so many women, and it can get a little bit catty and a little bit, unpleasant. But yeah, it was. It was
These
just-
are the stories we
This is
love to hear on
this
Life,
is
Love,
the
and
truth,
Grind.
and you're gonna hear it here first.
Yeah.
On Life, Love, and the Grind.
but it was, it was good. It was fun. It was difficult because you get paid, like sometimes you get paid like $75 a week, $125 on performance weeks. And so then you rehearse all day and then you waitress at night, and it's a grind.
That's it.
And it was hard to do. So I took that. I would do my passion for a while, and then I was like, you know what, I need a break, and I would go to college for like a year or a semester or something. So I went back and forth between the dance world where you would get a contract, and then it would end, and then I would be like, all right, so let me take some classes at school. So I did that. I went to 4 different universities, Indiana, Purdue, Columbia College in Chicago, where I taught afterwards. And I went to Hunter College in New York City when I was out there. So 4 different undergrad universities got me a bachelor's degree in political science. So yay me.
And the love for writing, did that come across during this or in the
No,
middle
I've
of it,
always
or-
loved writing. I've always, and then I had the time because I became a mom. And you know what? Sometimes your kids need you just to be there, but you're not necessarily doing anything. So my kids were premature. They were sick. My daughter was dealing with asthma a lot. And so almost once a week she had to come home, I got a phone call from the nurse, she's having asthma issues, so I was home to be there for her. So when you're home, what do? When you got a brain that keeps going, you write it down.
Yeah.
So let's switch over to you a little bit, Jeff. Obviously, maybe you have a little different background. I'm guessing you probably weren't into dance, and you're not a mom.
Or were you? 'Cause I
Or
wanna
were
hear
you?
about
Let's hear
that.
it. I want to hear about your grind a little bit that got you to environmental engineering and all that.
Well, I could start talking about my boyhood. I grew up in Southwest Ohio near Cincinnati. The weather we had this morning with the slush, that's what I grew up with. So now we're getting Cincinnati weather in Chicago. So that tells you something about climate change.
Oh,
But it was a rural area, and we had gardens, we had chickens, we had rabbits, and then we had pets, and some of them we ate. It was true rural life.
And some of them you just terrified because
Yeah.
they saw you eating the others.
We
Keep them in
we had
line.
snakes. We had to keep the snakes away from the babies because they were in cages outside. But we had 7 acres of woods. That was just, if I got in trouble with my dad, I would go hide in the woods. He couldn't find me. So, and then I migrated to towns. I lived in Middletown, Ohio for a while as a kid, and which is, if you read the book Hillbilly Elegy, it talks about the people I grew up with a lot. So it's a fascinating book. And so I have a diverse background. I ended up in a college town too, as part of growing up, and ended up going to school there, Miami University, and discovered they had an environmental science program. So I got a technical degree and then moved into environmental science and got a master's degree in that. So, and ever since then, I've been dedicated to that. I've been active in the Sierra Club and other things, and the Boy Scouts originally too, because we had the 7 acres of woods. So we had events there, and we camped out and traveled out west. So I had a lot of exposure to the natural world, and including agriculture with all its faults. I probably got exposed to pesticides that I can't name, but I'm still healthy, so, luckily. But it was sort of a very good, I think it's a very good life in many ways. A large family, so we had times where we didn't have enough to eat, because it was not necessarily an easy life at all times, but it was.
And now it seems that you both are interested in public service, serving people and trying to better the situation. I myself, as Sean knows, have stepped up to better the plight of our membership. And I remember one of the things when I was running for election in a union was, getting my best foot forward, letting people know what it is that I stood for. And one of the things I stand for is that when I'm running on a pure union platform. So when I ran, I remember one of the funny things was one of the guys who's running for a union position put out his flyers, put out his material, printed non-union. I didn't make the same mistake. What I did was contract with my my good friend Rich Lewandowski, who has been in business now for is it 3 generations, Sean? Right?
Yeah.
I'd say 3 generations. Tell us what you know about the work he does, because I know you have used him as well.
I've used Rich Lewandowski at Breaker Press, located in Chicago. He is an awesome union printer, one of the best out there for sure.
Well, of course he is, because his family has been in the game for three generations. And for 3 generations, when you're passing down a skill, you're probably pretty good at it.
And I give him credit in my race, helping me with all my mailers, as well as the incredible Sarah Sadat, who's obviously at the Women's March, helping her with her mailers as well. And the importance of not only being union, but standing behind it, using union printers is actually huge.
They've been involved in a lot of races, from the courthouse to the White House, right? So I'm saying that this is the guy to use for like I said, courthouse,
all the judges,
state house, or anything in between, because you want to, if you're getting out there, get your message across with a proud union printer, and no one prouder than Breaker Press. If you're interested in contacting them, their number is down here.
So for all the people running for office, Rich Lewandowski, Breaker Press, located in Chicagoland area, 3 generations. He's the guy to go to.
Let's bring it back to
hold on real quick. So I want to bring it back to you, Jeff, when you're talking about the importance of growing up. So how important is it, these forest preserves and just being outside, just in the general sense of people's health and the importance of being in nature and being active in in the outdoors? I don't think you can ever really have too much of that.
Oh no, definitely not. And I think if your blood pressure's high, if you've been stressed out, and whatever's going on in your life, and this is a great thing you can do to your kids. You just take them out in the woods and just walk, and as simple as that. And I had to organize a couple of outings with people, and one of them was there was just 3 of us, and he had a dog with him, and then a coyote comes by, and luckily the dog was on a leash, because the dog went and chased the coyote. And so you find unexpected things in nature, and it sort of resets your biology, it resets your mind, and it's just and of course it's physical exercise, so it's good for your heart. And so I think you as a doctor would understand that.
And DuPage County has some of the most beautiful forest preserves.
I was amazed. I lived in Columbus for a while, where I met my lovely wife Bonnie, and we had a forest preserve system there. It was more like urban parks in a way. Then came here, and it's like, oh my gosh, the quality of the biosphere, if you call it, in Chicago area, it actually is one of the better places to live for a large urban area in the whole country in terms of being near nature.
Tell me what that means, biosphere. Because to me,
I just sort of carelessly threw that out. I got to figure it out now, but it's like
it sounded good though.
It sounded pretty keyword right there.
The one concept I have is when you live in a suburb, say, or even in a city, you're not totally isolated from nature. Nature is around you, and then as you extend out, it becomes somewhat more suburban, or there's more trees, there's more corridors where wildlife moves around, there's more stuff in your backyard. Maybe if you get way out in the country, it's all a farmer's field, like fence row to fence row of corn, and that's actually kind of hard on wildlife. There's not much out there, but we're in that area, and we have unique geology and geography in this area, where there's because of the glaciation, we got rare plants, we got rare animals. We got, things that you wouldn't expect to find in this area, and we got nature preserves that are state designated, like very close by, and some large areas too, like Springbrook Prairie and Naperville. That's huge. You can get lost in there almost, and you forget you're in a suburban area.
And these are some of the appeals that people do move out of the city. They come to the suburbs, and what better place to come to than DuPage County, where we have these incredible forest preserves and such nice wildlife. And people have told me they moved here for the green space. Yeah.
Well, and I'll tell you, I'll share a little personal anecdote. I grew up in Massachusetts, and Massachusetts is one of those, you get 20 miles out of the city, and you can see the sky like you can't see anywhere else. And I used to tell my wife, because she never experienced this, you can hear the wind before you see the trees move, because you're basically you're hearing the wind, and then all of a sudden it gets to where you are. And she's like, you're just full of it. That's not a thing. Because when we step outside, sometimes what we hear is the traffic on Ogden or the traffic on Warrenville. And then she went there and she experienced it. And the only thing that really replicated that for me was when she's like, look, I can maybe not one up you, but at least give you that experience. And she took me to is it Blackwell Forest Preserve? And she took me, and I'm like, you're right. This is gorgeous. And I just had not even been cognizant that this treasure is a couple miles away. So I think a lot of times it's about, like you said, there's a certain feeling of tranquility what you get when you get away. My wife and I, third date, because I know the first date I closed the deal by winning an Emmy. I took her to the Emmy thing. That was my second date. Third date, she took me to Starved Rock because she knew I loved the nature, and that sealed the deal for me with her. But I'll tell you this: I grew up in a similar environment, raised chickens and all that.
Oh, really?
We're always plotting against each other.
Well, and
but,
Roz is actually the only guy I ever met that brought his Emmy to a date and just put it right there. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to say no, right?
right.
So, to come back to you a little bit, so,
and he said yes.
yeah, I'm glad Sarah got there. So,
Beautiful.
so before we come back to DuPage County, which obviously, again, the green space, the forest preserves, I want to talk a little bit about your volunteer work. So you were a volunteer biology and genetics teacher
it was like
in the Austin neighborhood,
in the
which a lot
Austin
of people maybe
neighborhood.
don't know
it was
is actually one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the city of Chicago.
right. It was at an alternative high school for young men and women who had some trouble succeeding in their regular high school. Many of the women had been pregnant and had children, and just rougher experiences, but that doesn't mean that you're not allowed to have the opportunity. And these kids were eager to learn. They were eager to be there. Beautiful young lives that wanted to know what I had to teach them, right? So I taught under this wonderful teacher. Her name was Sarah, and I can't remember her last name. She was wonderful. She has devoted her life to teaching these children. She takes them to the forest preserves on camping trips overnight in Chicago. She takes them all over the place so they can experience these things that they would not have experienced otherwise. It's just I met some beautiful young people there.
No, I love it. I mean, again, and really,
wonderful.
people don't really understand how really dangerous and hard these areas are. I mean, I'm on the street in Chicago, and Austin neighborhood is an incredibly dangerous place to grow, and to see you give back is incredible, because you know what, these kids want to learn too. They want to go to college, they want to get into trades, they want those same
Trades.
opportunities.
Can you share with us
Definitely
some of the
trades.
stories that they had when they came back from some of these field trips? What when they got these opportunities? Like, what really made you think, "Wow, this is a great teacher who's doing this, who's exposing these children, maybe, like you said, to the forest preserve, everything else." Well, tell me some of the inspirational stories that came out of that.
The thing that I can remember the most is one young woman who sat there and tried to think about what would happen in a thought experiment. You have a Diet Coke can or a Diet Cola can, sorry, that was full, or you have one that's empty, or you have one with an air bubble in it. What's going to float? What's going to sink? What's going to kind of stay in the middle? Just the thought process. So when you have the kind of experience of seeing things in nature, seeing what is buoyant, what is not buoyant, you kind of get an idea of how to think through issues and problems, even if it's not right there in front of you. So even if it's not a scientific experiment, it's life. It's being able to see the effects that one thing has on another thing, and to be able to think through what possible effects those actions can have on your environment, can have on people around you. It's that kind of thing. It's just beautiful people that are like, can I show you a picture of my daughter? A 17-year-old girl, right? Like, yes, you can show me a picture of your daughter. I would love to see your daughter. You want to see a picture of my daughter? So it's kind of like accepting people where they are and just giving them the opportunity to be the best people that they can be.
Yeah.
So
Well, and let's bring us back now again. I mean, the great work in Chicago. Obviously, we don't have to worry about those same issues in DuPage. You know what I mean? Like, there isn't gun violence in DuPage at the levels of Chicago. And, you know, our economy is a booming economy. I mean, this is one of the richest counties in the country.
but that
to be
doesn't
honest.
mean people aren't getting left behind.
And that's
right?
and that's comes to our next point of, you know, how do we keep stimulating this economy? How do we help keep growing this DuPage economy?
Well, business as
economy.
usual is not going to cut it. You know, I mean, with the changing environment, we have to start changing the way we do business, bringing green infrastructure, green jobs, things that make things sustainable for the long haul for our children and our children's children. Like, we need to start making changes now. I don't
So-
know how you feel.
So that's, so
Exactly.
solar energy is
Yeah.
kind of something that you're into.
Yeah, and
Jeff,
it's
so where you
something
going
I think I've had.
I didn't know about that.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about your involvement with solar energy.
Well, first of all, I have solar energy in my house.
Okay.
And I give lectures, and I just was in Glendale Heights a couple nights ago talking to a community.
Well, and I just,
About
I'm
that.
sorry to interrupt, but I just want to make sure I understand this, and I think
Yeah.
it'll be beneficial for the audience as well. Do you get subsidized for having solar panels? What I had
Mm-hmm.
heard sometimes is sometimes if you put the solar panels, it's an initial investment, but then there's some sort of how do I pronounce that? Help me.
subsidies.
That's it for doing this. Is that correct?
Yeah, there are some incentives,
Incentives.
and that there's a tax credit the federal government has. And they're slowly fading that out or phasing it out. There's the state of Illinois has a program where you get paid for the green attributes of electricity. They call them renewable energy certificates. It usually takes about 15 minutes to really explain that to people because it's such a weird concept, but it incentivizes. It puts cash in your pocket, so you get a big.
That's
check.
all you need to say. I don't need the 15 minutes. That's what I want to hear.
So it puts cash in your pocket, and of course it helps the environment. It helps the transition because the state of Illinois has some goals, very specific goals. And I've been involved with getting legislation passed in Springfield, where we got a coalition of people working to help make that happen at a faster pace because we got to move it along for the climate change issue.
So you put these solar panels on your house.
Yes.
After getting over the questions from neighbors, like, what the
Yeah.
hell are you doing?
Yeah.
Did you have any of those, by the way?
No, it's more acceptable now. And as a matter of fact, in my neighborhood, there's several homes within walking distance that have solar visible from the street.
Oh,
It used to be that you're worried about what the neighbors would think, but it's becoming more acceptable now. And of course, putting on your houses isn't enough. It's often, schools are putting them on their rooftops. It's happening in farmers' fields. The farmers are making money. It's like, yeah, we'll lease the land out to put solar panels here. The land regenerates because it's not being farmed to death. You could grow pollinator-friendly plants under the panels, or you can have, sheep grazing there if you want, and you can make it.
depending on the ordinance of the village.
Right.
Let's make that clear.
So what's
Like
cool
that,
being
like that.
somebody who's a member of a union, I like the fact that a lot of the larger projects are being done with union labor. So it's a job generating machine going here. And anytime you have a major transition, like when we went to the automobile from horses, that put people out of work, but it created tons of jobs. It was a major transformation of how everything happened after it affected how we built things. So and we're trying to undo that now, which is awkward. Obviously we need to change everything. Greta Thunberg said, we got to change everything. Well, what does that mean? And nobody really knows. Even in Congress, they're struggling with, what bills would work and which ones can we get through?
It seems sometimes like it's trial and error, doesn't it?
It often is, yeah. And
We
I think
can't be afraid of forward progression. That's where we're going.
Well, and renewable energy is a $1.9 trillion industry.
Yeah.
If we don't get in,
Yeah,
we're going
exactly.
to get left behind.
And find a
this
way to
is-
get that skilled workforce, that union workforce in on these jobs.
Yeah.
And that's why
Keeping
there's,
busy.
there are some programs that are focusing on getting, like in Kentucky, to get the coal workers,
Mhm.
train them on these new technologies.
Yeah.
Coal is going by the wayside.
Yeah.
We got to train you guys because we need your labor. We need you to be a part of this. So let's train you for something new and let's keep going.
Mhm.
And they can't be
Wow.
afraid of that. I know, coal miners been doing it third, fourth generation for
Right.
30 years. He has to see the writing on the wall that there is change coming, but it's still going to be
Scary.
done by union workers.
Exactly.
And his
Yeah.
son now can get into something that still pays you a good wage and a good union job. But
Yeah, and we have to pay attention to that. We don't want Southern Illinois left behind.
Yeah.
Those people are important. It's not just Northeast Illinois. We don't want to have this upstate, downstate dynamic where we're at each other's throats over something. We need to actually work together. And to get bills passed, you kind of need to do that anyway. I think I've noticed that just when hanging out with some politicians who are down there dealing with it's one thing to convince people to vote for you. It's another thing to go down there and govern. It's tough.
yeah,
And there's some tough issues, and we're doing getting new legislation on the books, the Clean Energy Jobs Act, which will amplify what's already happening. And we need to make more of that happen, and we need to do it in a just way so that nobody's left behind. And that's going to be the tricky part, making sure that we're not, just because you live in a coal mining town or you live in some town that had a nuclear power plant, it gets phased out someday. What's going to happen to that town after that nuclear? It may take 20 years to decommission it, and there'll be jobs there. But you still have to think about how these towns transition their economies, and we tend to
these are people's livelihoods. At
And
the
let's
end of
not
the
leave
day,
any work
Yeah, I mean,
behind.
I have a
Well,
sister.
or any
I
person,
have a
or any
sister lives in
person.
Anderson, Indiana. GM just pulled out one day. The town is just a miserable place. She's got a horrible job,
Mhm.
if you ask her. I mean, and she struggles. And it's like, how do you have rebuild an economy when there's this massive change? And you can do it abruptly and crudely, that it serves the interests of Wall Street, or you can do it in a way that serves the interests of our people here in Illinois.
well, and let me ask you, we talked about kind of as a macrocosm,
Yeah.
the national issues. Tell me what DuPage County faces in terms of becoming more environmentally friendly, or at least, even if not environmentally friendly, more environmentally conscious. What are some of the decisions that you use to change, both of you, the hearts and minds of the people that say, hey, this is an issue. It might not be as sexy as economic interest, but that we should be paying attention to.
I think a big thing is that people have to accept the fact that we're not trying to prevent climate change at this point. We are seeing the effects right here in DuPage County. I mean, all the flooding that's going on. This is overwhelming the stormwater systems, and you know why we need to start getting like experts in this kind of stuff into our local government. So people are seeing the effects right here in front of their eyes, and I think that is the most effective way to change people's hearts and minds, is to say, look, now what are we going to do about it?
Well, especially in Lyle. I mean, flooding
The
is a
flooding in
huge
Lyle.
issue in
Oh,
Lyle.
yeah.
It's always been. And I mean, and we had Liz Chapman on the show, maybe a month ago, and she was huge in the flood issues. And that's kind of what helped propel her into politics, was just fighting for people and being like, these people were losing homes and flooding was out of control. So there's got to be a way that these things have to be addressed.
But do you see this translate into interest? Do you see more people engaging in this dialogue because it's becoming more prevalent, or is it still
I
something
think
you have to
so.
inform people?
I think so. I mean, there's a certain number of people who are engaged, right? And these people are going to be engaged, and they're going to be kind of accepting of the discussion that's going on. Then there's a vast majority of people who are disengaged from any discussion whatsoever. So I think that is what we have to do, is to do a major outreach to see these people where they are and show them how things are affecting them. So I don't know. That's the hard part, is getting disengaged people engaged. And I think
Well, does some of your training in the caddy world of theater and dance help you with that? Help you?
I don't know. Perhaps. I mean, I don't know. People either like me or hate me. When I was,
I think that's the same with us.
I know the feeling. We
they
talked
either
about
like
that a
me
little
or
earlier.
hate me. I had a very short stint, about a year and a half, as a Luna Carpet Girl in Chicagoland back in 2005, 2006. So I got a lot of either, oh my God, that's so cool, you're the person who did that, or hey, you're her, I hate your voice. Stuff like that. So people either hate you or love you. So if I come across as a person that someone can like identify with, and I hope moms could identify with me because I am a mom, and I see the safety of children as kind of paramount in my life, that maybe people can identify with that and identify with how strongly I feel about that, and say, okay, well, here's the issue. They're breathing dirty air. They're getting bitten by disease-bearing mosquitoes because of climate change. They're suffering all of these effects. So let's do something to help the children, or, trying to get straight to the heart of everything, because people don't want to hear statistics. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially in the
Story, I
days of
think.
everything's fake news, and no one wants to believe anything they hear or read anymore.
Right.
I
So
mean,
if things are right in front of them and presented to them in a way that they can feel what's happening.
Well, and it seems like you're kind of in a place. I mean, again, running for politics it's a hard business. I mean, like you say, people love you, they hate you. They love you one minute, then they find out your political beliefs, and now they're like, "Whoa, I'm out."
I don't think that's just the political world. Obviously, the Luna carpet world was very similar.
Yeah.
I gotta ask, I'm gonna sidetrack a little, as Sean sometimes doesn't like when I do. But how did
I'll bring
that
it back.
come? How did that come about?
I was acting. Dancing turned into acting. You go to auditions, you get certain things, you get to know people, and one thing leads to another.
Wow.
I was almost in the Screen Actors Guild union.
Yeah,
I was Taft-Hartley lead in.
So that would have been your third union. 'Cause you
That would have
were
been my
in
third
teachers
union. Yeah. So
Good for you.
now I need the moms union. Oh boy, do I need a moms
That's
union.
a concept.
As long as we organize them all into the bricklayers union and triple our numbers, I'm all.
After your alpha male comment, I don't know
Yeah,
how that
exactly.
would
We need
work
more
out
women
for you.
for sure. I know.
You find out they can outwork you.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not saying anything.
Yeah. So obviously, so you're both running in DuPage. It's all about strengthening the local economy. So tell us a little bit about your race, Jeff, of kind of what's going on in the Forest Preserve as of right now, and what you will bring differently.
And I got a question to piggyback off of that. I know you can run as a Republican or a Democrat. How is a Forest Preserve issue even a partisan issue? Why would something like
And
that
why
have
should
to
it
be
be?
declared? Yeah.
Yeah, we
What's
talked
the
about the
difference
judges too.
Administration in either
Yeah.
partisan capacity? That's something that's always kind of
Mhm.
I
eluded.
think it's just an accident of history, perhaps. I think the Forest Preserve District used to be part of the county. There was one board, and they split them off. And there's been advantages to that, I think, because the Forest Preserve has a somewhat different mission, and there's some landfills that need to be taken care of. That we actually own the landfills in the Forest Preserve. As citizens, they're ours, and they have to be managed properly. Make sure that you don't have leachate leaking into groundwater or
No, what's in
gases
these
coming.
landfills? Is it just the
was
landfill
like
for the general public?
Yeah,
or
it was
is it-
just regular municipal solid waste, they called it, and some of them are older than others. But like in Blackwell, you have the big mountain
so
thing
that's
where you
garbage
go,
under there.
yeah, you go inner tubing in the winter. You have good snow, you can inner tube down that and go at the bottom and have hot coffee or chocolate. That's actually a landfill.
And they're
Yes.
still venting methane from that,
Yes.
is what I understand.
And in Green Valley, they actually were taking the gases and turning them into electricity. So they had a generation plant there.
So
that
that's
was
what that
kinda cool.
was.
Yeah,
My
yeah,
poor
yeah,
kid, I changed her diet after that trip. I thought it was her.
Oh, but that's another cool place to go too. If you like astronomy, you go up there in a cold winter night and you get a nice view of the sky.
Well, so tell me this, in terms of like the administration itself, tell me what your plans are.
Well, first of all, I like to pay a lot of attention to the trail system and natural area restoration. I worked with the Glen Ellen Park District one summer, just having fun getting out in the weeds, literally, like weeding the gardens. But it was more of a natural system. We're trying to restore some areas with natural plants, and it had to remove native or non-native plants, and it's just literally grungy kind of, you get dirty kind of work, and you get hot in the sun, that kind of work. And I spent a summer doing that just for fun. I got paid a little bit of wage, but it was just to help a friend who's in the park district.
Well, I heard there's a push for that to maybe get rid of lawn, manicured lawns, and bring back native plants.
Yeah, there's
Why is that something that people expend effort into doing? What is the benefit of that?
Well, the plants are beautiful, and if you get the right plants in the right place, if you put thought into design, it's a very attractive garden, and it draws a lot of pollinators. So I'm having fun with pollinators in the yard, like dozens of varieties of bees and wasps and flies that will come even. And you just didn't realize there's so many diverse insects in your yard. That'd be a fun thing to do with children too, actually. Yeah. And then less maintenance. If you get it going, it's easy maintenance garden. And people are interested in monarchs. There's a DuPage Monarch Project. The Sierra Club's been supporting that. I've been involved with that, just helping teach people how you can plant plants that are friendly toward pollinators, including the monarch that migrates through. And people just resonate with that. And particularly the Latino community, and like in West Chicago, most of them are from that, is it called Mio? I can't pronounce it quite, Michoacan or something like that. It's near Mexico City. That's where all the monarchs
go in the winter.
Monarchs,
yeah.
And there's a cultural resonance with them. And they've been planting, we've been helping them plant gardens and working with them in
I have
West
noticed
Chicago or Orlando Heights.
I've noticed a lot more butterflies this year than, in the last couple of years. Is that by accident, or is that because of these?
It fluctuates. I think it depends on what weather patterns they run into. Sometimes the weather in Mexico is different than it used to be. It gets too dry, or they get a freak winter storm, and it kills some of them off as they overwinter in the pine trees down there. And then they come up here. They got to work their way through Texas, and if there's a severe drought, they're going to have a hard time finding milkweed to start the next generation. It takes several generations for them to show up here. So it's an amazing process, and people find that awesome. And so this is a way we can connect people to nature. So I'm looking for ways of connecting people, and if any better trails, getting them out and getting them to see the wildlife and the insects and the butterflies and things like that.
I want to interject just about the native plants as opposed to lawns.
Yeah.
When you have just a lawn, the
Uh-huh.
roots go down only so far. Things get eroded. It doesn't suck up any water. But when you have the
Yeah.
native plants, the roots go down much, much deeper.
Mhm.
They take up a lot more water. So if we're dealing with flooding issues,
Mhm.
native plants can help suck up some of that
They do,
water
yeah.
and help with erosion because the roots go down so much
Yeah.
deeper than just having a lawn. I think that's
So, and if you know, I brought a map here. This shows the forest preserve system, a couple of maps. And if you look at this, you'll see that a lot of it's in river valleys. And it soaks up a lot of water. You have natural land, it just soaks up a lot of water. And that helps with flooding and can you see that?
Bring it down a little.
Sarah's not here to do the technical
Yeah.
thing, so we can actually put it on, but,
Yeah.
Again, a
for
shout out to
everyone
Sarah
watching on
Cadet,
social
who's,
media,
out at the
here's
Women's
what we're
March.
looking at. Sorry, I kicked your water
Yeah.
bottle over. I'm very
Yeah.
old school in doing it this
Yeah,
way,
yeah.
but
And you can see how it's all, we have these all over. There's like 60 of these preserves or forest preserves in the county. And that means no matter where you live, you're a short distance from some of this. So you can be near, there's usually water nearby, like a stream or a lake.
can I hang on to one of those?
Well, like you say,
Yes,
is not only is it just beautiful, but again, going back to the health
Yeah.
and just getting active, having places to walk and having
Yes,
places to go be in nature, I think is so important just as humans to just be. I mean, again, we only have
Yeah.
one Earth. That's
Yeah.
it. We got to make sure it lasts. You
And
know?
that's the number one interest people have is just going for a walk in the woods. I mean, they've done,
Yeah.
it's just
there's a planning
mental
process.
health.
Yes.
Yeah.
uh-huh.
It's just so good. Like I just sometimes when my brain's a mess, I'm like, I gotta go take
Yeah.
a hike somewhere.
Yeah.
And I go.
Mhm.
And then I'm like, whew.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I
So
can get
you're
back at it.
so you're running against an incumbent who's
Uh-huh.
been there for probably a little bit of
Mhm.
time, and so is this a full-time job, the
No.
commissioner?
No, not really. I mean, there's weekly meetings, and you might get a packet you have to review before you go, and hopefully you're doing your homework. And I think it's essentially a part-time job, like most commissions are. You know,
Mhm. But they got a pretty nice salary. As of now, they kind of have a pretty decent
Yes.
wage.
Yeah, it's a pretty substantial. I'd be more concerned about what is the salaries of the people who are. We have professional staff there that are working for us, the taxpayer, and some of them. One of them told me he has colleagues who cannot afford to live in DuPage County. They work here, and they work in the forest preserves, and they do some really cool stuff. Some of it's grunt work, some of it's sciencey kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But some of them have to live further out where the rents are cheaper or whatever. It's so I think that's kind of a problem. We got to make sure that the staff have the resources they need and everything they need to succeed at what they do, and that includes having enough of income. It's prevailing wage is what I'm told. So I'm thinking, well, that would be the minimum, but can we do a little better? And do commissioners need to be paid what they do? And that's sort of a kind of a delicate balancing
Yeah.
act, because I think if you want quality people working or running for office, some of them might need the income. They might need the healthcare plan. I don't need the healthcare plan. I don't want to mooch off the public.
Yeah.
I could, I already have one because being in the union and government, and we have something of a pension and a 401k, what's equivalent to a 401k. So I have some resources as somebody who's retired, but
So if elected, you wouldn't take the health care that the taxpayers are paying into.
no, I don't need to take
Yeah.
that. I certainly don't need a pension on top of what I already have. It's not a huge pension, but that's when the concerned taxpayers have expressed in recent years is people who are like double dipping. And I think if you work full-time jobs and paid your dues into it, it's a contractual thing. So your employer owes you a pension.
Mm.
But if you're just working a part-time job and a few hours a week and then you get this huge pension, I think there's been a history of that. And I think the taxpayers said, this is crazy wrong, because it's like,
Yeah, I agree.
I as a citizen don't get that where I work.
Yeah. No, I
So
agree.
there's a fairness thing there. So
Well, you know what? I get a question regarding, we were talking about salary a little. One thing that kind of interested me was, you're a trained doctor, are you not?
yeah.
And I'll tell you this. So I'm Indian, and culturally in our culture, it's that, you know what, a doctor makes a lot of money. They have a high status, and that's what every mother wants their kid to be. It's big in our community. You trained, you did the schooling, but you decided to step away. Tell me why that was.
Yeah, well, in my second year of medical school, I got pregnant with twins. It wasn't an accident. My husband and I spent 2.5 years trying, and we finally got some fertility help. And so we were going. We were like, let's do this, and we got twins out of it, which was awesome. I took a 6-month leave of absence, and then I went right back at it because everything in medicine is, if you're a woman, you're like already half the status. So I just kept on going and going and going until I couldn't go anymore. And these guys aren't paying attention to me.
No. What we're doing, just to let you know, and I should have explained this before, to let you guys, to remind you guys, your questions, we are taking a look and we are preparing for what questions we will ask you. Yeah.
Sorry about
So,
that. Yeah, I'm trying to-
no,
Again, our producer's not here. They usually help us and pass me a sticky note.
But let me get back to like the heart of it. The heart of it was that I saw a lot of physicians were in it for the money. We're in it exactly for the wrong reasons, if you ask me. You really need to be a humanitarian if you're going to serve people. I saw people telling students to go into urology because, hey, you get all the people on dialysis and that's where the real money is. And for me, I'm like, people on dialysis are not a cash cow. That is just not what it is. These are people. I had one surgeon, sorry, computer.
Well, let me ask you this. Did that change your perspective being told that? Like urologist, when you go to one, here's a specialist who you think is doing the dirty of the work, and you think they're and I'm sure most of them are, or some of them are down people, but did hearing those type of things change your perspective?
Absolutely. It hit me right in the heart. I was like, wait a minute. I thought everybody was in this to make humanity better, to help people. That's what I thought. That's what I thought. And it wasn't true.
And so how did you reconcile that with the fact that, hey, I went through all this training? Because a lot of times you're put in a situation, you realize these are my peers, these are the people whose values supposedly I changed, the education I changed. What was that like to have to take a step back and be like, you know what, maybe I need to reevaluate my life? Because I would think after that investment and that time, it wasn't an easy decision. I know the twins probably helped make it a little easier, but what was that like? Was it scary? Or
it was absolutely scary. And I do want to say that there are the amount of people in medicine who care greatly outnumber the people who are just trying to make money off of it. I do want to say that. Doctors, nurses, everybody, they're wonderful, wonderful people. But yes, doing that was scary. And I'm still not quite coming to terms. I mean, my future is still ahead of me. So we'll see, what happens. I have a ton of student loans, that's for sure. But I have a ton of knowledge that I can use to help people. That's one of the reasons why I'm running is because I've got all this and I'm like, what am I going to do with it? It seems selfish to keep it to myself. So tap this. It's here.
well, it seems like some of the knowledge and some of the creativity you have put in a forum where you can share it with people in the form of writing. Tell us a little about some of the books you've written.
Yeah, well, so this is my first collection
You can
of
hold them
essays.
up so the people watching can see.
It's called Resistance Essays from the Heartland. And this was actually, these are a collection of essays from the first Women's March to last August. So I started a blog. And so I'm giving these to you guys. Raza, this is for you. It says, keep fighting the good fight. And Sean, this one's for you. So keep fighting the good fight. I also wrote.
Raza's a residential reader.
Well,
I'll probably read this in an hour.
Well, I'll tell you this. You keep bringing gifts and you come on every week.
Hey, I'll have to keep writing. I'll have to. I wrote this one for my children. It's called The Get Along Game. And I thought that maybe your daughter might like to have that read to her.
So we've got 3 kids and so
maybe.
thank you for this gift, and I'll be buying 2 others because I want each of these kids reading this because these gray hairs, they're not by accident. As much as I hate to say it's not by pollution, it's by those kids. Just kidding, I love you guys.
Yes, of course.
And then
my final, this was my my novel that once again, you either love it or you hate it. About the dance world. It's based on a mother-daughter relationship, but it's also been influenced by Greek tragedy. So, which is one of the things that I studied when I was getting my master's degree. So you either love it or you hate it. Bad stuff happens, good stuff happens.
Well,
What it is.
you know
I'm a literary nerd, so I have to
read
go-
that one too.
How do you tie that together? Like, how do you?
No, I'll buy it.
I mean, is there a? I'm not going to ask straight up. Is there a tragic hero? But how do you bridge the 2 worlds? You have a modern contemporary story. Is that what it is?
Yes,
But
it is.
you bridge it with tell me.
with the events that happen. I mean, if you look back at Greek tragedy, some of the most horrible things that could happen to humans happens. And I don't think we're used to seeing that these days. And I've kind of brought it back in the form of ballet and a mother-daughter relationship, and the art world, basically. I had one of the critiques I had of it was that it kind of brings in the Me Too movement into it, because you have a young girl who's going off by herself to New York City to kind of make her way in the art world, and she's vulnerable. She's vulnerable. So,
Well, just another shout out too for the Me Too movement. You know, Sara Sadat's not here because she's out there at the Women's March. I mean, when Raza and myself aren't shining light on the good people doing the community, we're out there fighting for it. So, you know, shout out to Sara for not just talking and being there in the forefront for women's rights and the Me Too movement, which has been huge.
Now, was that something you were cognizantly looking to talk about the Me Too movement, or was this a critique that came up after when people read and they saw the parallel?
no, I mean, of course I was writing it during that time.
Okay.
So, but the Me Too movement is just kind of like the galvanization of things that have been happening for a really long time to women, especially in the theatrical and art and performance world, and all over. So, I mean, these things were in there, and then the Me Too movement came along, and I kept writing, and I was like, hey, this is, you know, we need to speak to this now. So that
Diversity and ideas. And I think that's where we kind of got to get away from. We have to embrace different ideas if you want to embrace different cultures, different genders. So it's plain and simple. So I'm glad that we have people like both of you running with extensive backgrounds and everything where you guys have come from.
But as you know, our show never endorses people. But
This is
we're
never
happy
endorsement,
that
but
you were here to
telling the grind.
share your story. Tell me about a little bit about your journey as a writer. Throughout the course of everything else, how you came upon to be like, you know what, I want to be expressive in this way too. Because obviously, I'm now taking a look at these, and they're not the same genre, right? I mean, you have something for the siblings, maybe for the family dynamic, and then actually, I guess they're all kind of family dynamic. Was that more something that you're interested in, or?
No, not really. I started writing the children's book because my son was born, I kid you not, a Civil War historian. So at the beginning, they travel back in time, and they go back to one of my son's favorite battles. Was it the first day of Gettysburg? I can't even remember, to visit one of my son's favorite soldiers. So I basically did it for them. They would go out for their half day of kindergarten, and when they got home, they would have like a chapter that I would read to them. And so that was just kind of like our thing. And so then I had to take into my daughter's interests, and she was into pioneers and stuff. So they went back in time to visit some pioneers. And so every day they would come back. And so then they did some time travel, and then I had to get them back home again. So I had to do my quantum physics research, which is in there as well. So
Really?
yeah.
Will I find that dry if I don't like
You
math
will
and
not.
physics?
No,
Or?
no.
Okay.
I mean, it's for kids. It's awesome.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean that's very cool.
So just to transition into a couple of questions. Obviously, you both are on climate change. So just to talk about voting in general, Gen Zers and millennials. I'm a millennial myself. You know, climate change and these issues are huge. How do we get more young people to the voting box? And I want to hear both your opinions. And I think I know an answer of voting as well to get people to vote.
Do you have anything, Jeff?
Well, first of all, there was something on the Yale. There's a Yale institution at Yale University that talks about climate communications, and they do studies, they do surveys, including this area. And what's interesting is most people agree that climate change is real and it's impacting us. And then they will say in their survey, 75% might say we need to do something about it. And we had over in Elmhurst a proposition on the ballot. Yeah, we need to have our government to do something about it. Voters were saying yes, this is an issue, and but 55% of them said I don't think there's a consensus in the scientific community. And so what happened was the media confused everybody. It was deliberate in the sense that they were looking at sources that were deliberately trying to confuse us. And the media kind of failed to sort that out properly. nationally. So I think we're kind of confused on the issue, and we forget that there are solutions that are viable and they're good for the economy. And it's clever ideas from the Green New Deal, which deals with social issues, all the way over to let's put a price on carbon, let's use market forces to make it work. And that latter option is sometimes appealing to Republicans, but for some reason they're distancing themselves from that right now, which confuses me because that was the kind of thing they would champion, say, 10, 20 years ago. Now they flipped on it. So I don't understand what that's about. But once we sort it out for people and give them an education, I think some of them will say, yeah, this matters. Now I can find out who's running for office and where they stand on this, that, or the other. And maybe they can get them more engaged, because I think people need to recognize their voice matters and it counts. They got to vote. And, it's just
Jeanette, rebuttal.
I agree.
Voting in general
I
is
agree 100% boring.
yeah.
But the thing is to reach out to younger voters, you have to make it exciting, and you have
yes,
to use the language that younger people use. I mean, I'm a Gen Xer, so I'm not that young, but I feel like I still have like the understanding of social media and all that kind of good stuff. And this is where the younger people are. The newest thing is TikTok. You got to get out there on TikTok, man, so you can get your message across to these young people. I'm trying to do this. I've made a couple of YouTube videos, where you snip snippets together, keep the message moving, keep it exciting, because no one's got time for it anymore.
Yeah, it's very true. We had a TikTok, I believe. It was something, a jabber or something, where we had Sean in a little elf outfit.
The jibber jabber.
Jibber jabber.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it didn't go viral.
It did in some circles, as I understand.
Yeah.
But,
But I worked with my children. There's a video that I did that got over 20,000 views over Twitter because Michael Mann retweeted it. Michael Mann, the climate scientist who's been on all these kind of TV news shows, he retweeted it. My children colored and cut out all these kind of things, and then we explained it. I had them narrate what is climate change, because people don't really even know, like, what is the science behind it. And it's so simple. It's a greenhouse, it's basically light and energy that gets bounced around in different ways. And my children were able to explain it with their drawings and their narration, stuff like that gets even younger people, not even just voting age, but even younger people involved. And I've had like teachers from, I don't know, states out west. They're like, do you have a YouTube link for this? I need to use it for my kids, and I can't get Twitter on my, at the school. So I put it up on YouTube, and it's made the rounds.
I guess the media makes a difference, because I was in a video with Sean Caston, and we're doing a spoof on Parks and Recreation. It went nowhere on Facebook, I think, because it's the baby boomer generation is on Facebook. But I think it was YouTube or some other medium, the thing just took off, like 4,000 views. And so I have to start thinking about this.
Like Twitter is where.
Well, I
I'm on
think
Twitter,
as a professional storyteller myself, I think it's about the story, right? You want to put the story out there. You want to make the message at the forefront. And it seems like you were very effective in doing that.
You need to make it accessible as well. You need to make it right there in front of people.
Well,
they're not going to seek it out. They're not going to look for it.
I might be a little biased, but I think there's no better place than to tune into Life, Love, and the Grind every week, 1 to 2 p.m. to get your first look into everything going on in politics and
I've heard similar
and the
things. I've
community.
heard nothing but good things about it.
You know what I have too. So I think it's good. I think just in general, we need young people voting. I mean, again, this isn't a left or right issue. It's just understanding that your voice matters, and to please come out and vote, because people have a lot of passion for a lot of things. So we have a few minutes left. Do you guys want to kind of end with a couple? Jeff, do you want to kind of?
Oh yeah, well, certainly. And I think I always like the thing that Bernie, we call him, running for office for president. He appeals to young people because he says no more college tuition bills for the next 30 years. They're not enslaved to that. And so he had a message that appealed. But I'm thinking one thing that would appeal to people who are younger is, if we could put solar panels on buildings at forest preserves and so that people can see it, have them at Morton Arboretum. They got perfect buildings for it. Convince them to put solar in, and make it accessible to the public. And then younger people can say, well, this could be the future. Maybe I can have a role to play. And I think, and that gets people outside in nature at the same time. So I think, I have some expertise in solar. I'm not an expert exactly, but I have knowledge. And then
And Jeanette.
And yeah,
yes.
Jeanette, sorry to cut you off, but we have 2
No.
There
minutes.
we need 2 kids.
And you have a 5-way race, so
Yes, we do
Yeah,
have a
cool.
5-way race. It's going to be really fun. That's all I have to say about it. It's going to be really fun. And I guess the main thing is who do you want to represent you? Somebody who does have a little bit of expertise in something, or somebody who doesn't. So,
Well, I would like to thank both of you for coming
Yeah.
and sharing your stories, and of course for the light reading that me and my kids will be participating in the next few days. And thank you guys
Yeah,
for
thanks for all that.
watching, listening, and for the great questions. We're sorry if we didn't get to all of them, but again, you know how to get in touch with these two.
and the primary is March 17th. Make sure to
yes,
go out and vote.
vote.
And
Vote yes.
And
Thank
yeah.
you guys.
Yeah,
Thank you for
thank
doing
you
this.
guys.
This is great.
yeah, and don't forget, tune in every Saturday, 1 to 2 p.m. And then after the show, you can always find the
Life, Love, and the
replay.
Grind.
Life, Love, and the Grind on
and
Facebook.
yeah, and you know the right printer to go to for all your printing
Yeah.
needs as well.
Rich
Breaker
Lewandowski with
Press.
Breaker Press.
Thank you guys
Thank you
very
guys.
much.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you.
That went by fast.